and welcome back to the Blackfoot Book Club and yet another edition of my essential film reviews collection. And I bring you my long, rambling musings on one of my favourite films of 2022 entitled Elvis, directed by Luhrmann. I was too young for any of Elvis Presley's many periods of international fame and was a mere toddler when the unfairly and much maligned Fat Elvis met a broken-hearted final demise in 1977 at the criminally youthful age of just 42. From Elvis The Pelvis and the threat to the establishment that the exciting young man from Memphis was in the 1950s, through the enforced military service in Germany of the 1960s and the rebirth of a more rounded and all-American boy figure the establishment and his fans could love, they are all on display here in a somewhat warts and all telling of someone I've grown up with, but whom I always saw as the most outwardly happy man, but who was clearly incredibly unhappy on the inside and away from the stage that he craved. The parallels with the life of Muhammad Ali are starkly apparent. The outsider and threat to an established order who was so radically fresh, different and absolutely adored by a vast public, cut down in their prime, curtailed and rounded before being approved of, acceptable, then absorbed as a more agreeable and non-threatening part of an established life. I lived through the final years of the King, or the comeback years as they were or are known, and I grew up with Elvis Presley due to the complete obsessional love my youngest sister had for the greatest of all showmen. As is shown in such a pinprick and sharp focus in the film, Elvis was an industry, a commodity, a brand, and, deep breath everyone, a slave, and long after that dreadful smear on humanity had been outlawed, as well as long before such things as being a singer-songwriter could be deemed an industry and a brand from which merchandise could be sold in the gazillion. My dear youngest sister had everything that could possibly be construed as memorabilia back in the day, from pictures, tapes and records, through to ashtrays, calendars and mirrored clocks with the face of the King. This aspect, amongst many others, is my main reasoning for describing this telling of his life as warts and all, as well as showcasing the brilliance of the broken-hearted human being behind the brand image, and an industrial brand so cruelly and selfishly exploited. In many ways I've grown up with Elvis long after his death. Many of us have, and I still adore his comeback years, especially shows such as Aloha from Hawaii, or others whereby we see, or we believe we see, the truest and most human Elvis Presley. The performer, the singer, the believer, and the showman preaching his gospel and black roots R&B inspired music to the masses. I've also grown up with the books and tall tales of his mysterious manager and his shameless exploitation, his life after death, the continuing of a brand and an industry that will never die, and frankly, after seeing this fantastic telling of his life, I rather hope he did disappear for a quieter life, fake his own death and, whilst he may not have worked down the chip shop of the Kirsty MacColl song of the 1980s, I hope he found some peace, wherever he may be, within our universe. Supported by Olivia de Jong as Elvis Presley's wife, Priscilla, Helen Thompson, mother, and Richard Roxburgh, father, one of a supporting standout falls to David Wenham as singer-songwriter Hank Snow, amongst many other portrayals of real-life friends and influences, such as singer-songwriters B.B. King and Little Richard. But here are your two principal players. Elvis Presley, Austin Butler. First of all, it must be acknowledged as an incredible, heartfelt portrayal and incredibly impressive. Despite having roles in films directed by Quentin Tarantino and Kevin Smith since 2016, I wasn't aware of Austin Butler, but now I am. All of the hip-moving and pelvic-shaking moves are here, but far more impressive is the showcase he provides of the no doubt incredible highs and depressive lows experienced by the man and the myth he inhabits. from the innocent idealist hanging out and breaking segregationist barriers between black and white, as well as the real inspiration for his music, through to the broken-hearted man in his early 40s saying a tearful goodbye to his young daughter before the start of his final run of shows. It's a tour de force performance from Austin Butler. Bravo! Colonel Tom Parker, Tom Hanks. Superb performance from Hanks, but what else do you expect? Reprehensible, exploitative, somewhat con man, visionary, slave owner, or a driven manager who sees the spectacular impact this incredibly unique man can have in the entertainment industry. All are on display here in a performance shown often and very deliberately as a man in the shadows, a shadowy figure, an interloper into a tight family, or the Memphis Mafia, and the archetypal arch manipulator and puppet master pulling the strings. Always addressing his young protege as boy or my boy, I felt the film pulled no punches in showing an unsympathetic and despicable character flogging a dead horse repeatedly and only to settle his own bad bets. As lonely as his young charge, Hanks showcases this with a haggard, cold display of a secretive character living on his wits and as deeply unhappy as the young man who would grow into a legend that he would quickly become. The only gripe I have for this film, and from one only viewing so far, is the over-reliance the film had for the story of Tom Parker and Hanks's seemingly deathbed-style narration. I immediately felt I was seeing and hearing his story rather than that of our legendary musical hero. Aside from this, it was a typical Baz Luhrmann directed film, full of glitz and glamour and titled slides progressing us from the early breakthrough days on some records, before the King's ultimately sad demise. Real-life footage is littered throughout, the deaths of Martin Luther King and Robert F. Kennedy especially affecting, and unless I'm mistaken, the film's final song of Unchained Melody and associated footage was from the King himself. I may indeed have been mistaken, as I was wiping away a few rogue tears long before this incredibly moving denouement. I didn't expect to cry, as perhaps I didn't expect to have so much invested in the film by the time Elvis sings for the final time. But I did, and I was also enveloped in a huge sense of sadness for the man, the son, the father, the husband, and the legend that will never, ever die. Highly recommended. And that was Elvis, directed by Baz Luhrmann from 2022. And this is Stephen Blackford in a Beatles t-shirt. Reading and writing pointless, but spoiler-free film reviews since 2012. And I leave you in peace and in solidarity. And I thank you so much for watching. Peace, everyone.